President Sharp, you mentioned in passing some of the anti-police violence. I wonder if you could emphasize.
Again, we do not support, condone, and will actively be against any violence against police. We're not anti-police. We're anti-police brutality. Many members of our community, many members of our churches, members of National Action Network are police. We're not anti-police.
That's right.
They're trying to do a broad stroke that we're anti-police. To say that a policeman, that even the police leadership said violated policy, makes you anti-police, is to say that police should be able to do whatever they want to do. That ought not to be accepted in this country. We cannot have any segment of society where people are above the law. I know we're in the Trump era, but we've not lost our minds.
That's right.
Reverend.
They should absolutely go to disciplinary trials, or even further, if they issued false statements. If they offered false statements in the grand jury, that's perjury, which is why the case should be reopened and it ought to be reviewed. Because now there's a finding of the facts in this internal investigation and trial that ought to be matched with what was told to a grand jury, which is subject to perjury laws.
Reverend, I noticed on the wall back here, a photo of you with Baez's mother during the Baez-Labode issue. Labode ultimately was convicted, federal civil rights issue. And it's the one case that the judge said was most like this case here in her ruling and bolstered her decision here. Do you think that the Trump administration, in waiting out the 5-year statute of limitations, purposefully tried to avoid a similar federal criminal civil rights trial against Pantaleo?
I would say that I do not know what was done on purpose, but I know what was done. And what was done was the opposite of what was done in the Labode case. I know that there were those in the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department, according to many reports, that said they wanted to proceed, and all of a sudden they were stopped. And I know for a fact that there was enough evidence to go forward, and they decided not to go with it. I will not be as reckless as the president is with his tweets on me in saying it was done on purpose, but it was done in fact.
Reverend, today Commissioner O'Neill said that First Deputy Commissioner Ben Tucker reached out to the Garner family and is waiting for a response. Will the Garner family be reaching out to First Deputy Commissioner Ben Tucker? Will there be a dialogue?
That is up to the family, and we not discuss that in public. Again, the dialogue is going to be with the Congress and the state. Other dialogues we will deal with when we deal with it.
Can I ask Ms. Garner, the police commissioner said that when he watches that horrifying video, he has a gut reaction, quote, Mr. Garner, don't do it, Mr. Garner, don't do it, comply. What did you make of the police commissioner's statement about his gut reaction when he watches that video?
I think he had a misspeak. I think he meant to say, Pantaleo, don't do it, let him go, get off of him. That's what I think. I think he misspoke, and I think that he watched the video, and he is in fact a human being with a heart and a conscience to say that, Pantaleo, you did something wrong. So I heard what he said, but I think he just misspoke.
Hey, well, can you talk to us about the shirt that you're wearing?
This is the shirt that I wore about 2 weeks ago while we were standing up here. Yes. Officer Pantaleo, well now I can say Daniel Pantaleo is a murderer, and that's just how I feel. I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and now I wear it on my chest. I feel that he is a murderer. I feel that he could have gotten off of Eric Garner. I feel that he made a choice, and everybody has a choice. When you're in life, you have a choice. You watch The Matrix, you take a red pill or a blue pill. So I'm just saying, I feel as though he is a murderer. I feel like he murdered Eric Garner.
And let me say, she's not the only one today that said he could have gotten up. The commissioner said.
Commissioner said.
Yeah, that's right.
I guess he's a cop hater.
Ms. Garner, we have the transcript to clarify that Commissioner O'Neill said, when I watched the video, I said to myself, Mr. Garner, don't do it, comply. And then I said to Officer Pantaleo, don't do it. I something about the decisions made by both Officer Pantaleo and Mr. Garner. Ms. Garner, when you watch that video, what do you say?
When I watch the video, I see my father being killed.
That's right, say that.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend.
Thank you, Reverend Sharpton. All your work. Thank you. Stay on.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No,
They
you missed
showed
it.
me?
Didn't write your resume, but civil rights made somebody read your resume.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. That was Aisha saying thank you for your hard work. And we have Aisha secured today. Say cool. What did I say?
It's okay. That's what Reverend Sharpton does.
And that was actually the press conference for the firing of Pantaleo. All right? So that's 5 years in the coming. And it was quite a revelation to hear Emerald speak as well as she does. And,
Well, she's grown.
she grew up in this nonsense. We've seen her sister, another activist, pass away, her stepfather, and just last week, recently in Jamaica. So with all this trauma going on, at least we got some positive note. But see, in most of the press conferences, they say they're going to pursue, this is just the beginning.
Right.
Right? We heard comments made about the police commissioner, somebody claiming people being cop haters. I didn't quite catch that. But, well, tell us what you think. You were there for that?
Well, yes, I was actually, I did not know that the firing had happened. So it must have just happened.
Oh, you missed it.
No.
12:30 announcement was made.
Right, but I got the
By the
announcement on
commissioner.
television at that same time. The announcement was made. I happened to be in the barber shop
Okay.
and planning for an event that we have tomorrow. And I heard it, and I'm like, wait a minute, what? And so I was really excited about it. And I said, I was right down from the network, so I went to the network. And then as I'm walking to the network, I'm thinking that like his firing, that all he was fired. They didn't say that he was indicted, convicted, and would be serving time for a murder. They only said that he was fired. So something about it, you know, at first there was this spark of excitement and joy and almost this celebratory feeling. And then as I walked down the block to the House of Justice, I began to really, really think about what this meant. This meant that this man's life did not mean much. It took 5 years to fire Pantaleo when you could see in the video 11 times the man said, Eric Garner said, I cannot breathe, 11 times. And that people continued Pantaleo continued to choke him and did not let up. And that the other officers also assisted with that by staying on top of him. And no one intervened. And I remember that. I remember watching that video over and over and over again, a number of times at the network, at other events that Reverend Sharpton had done. I remember there was a convening of political officials and heads of agencies and other community leaders, and I was, you know, grateful to be in the room with those folk, and they were looking at the video, just kind of examining what happened. And it was just real clear, and everybody was sad. People started crying in that room, including me, when you could see that it was obvious that he was begging for his life. I cannot breathe, 11 times. So while, you know, some people are calling this justice, for me, this is injustice. This is probably injustice served up in its final way, to almost make you feel like something was done when this man only lost his job, when Eric Garner's family lost lost someone they loved. So, you know, I'm with Reverend Sharpton that this is not something to celebrate. While I'm grateful that they, for whatever reason, they went on and chose to fire him, and that was Commissioner O'Neill. And I know he had to stand up in a grand way for whatever reason, because it's not hard in this city when you go against the grain. 5 years, nothing happened. But at the same time, had this been any other case, I think that, and the tables were turned, and that person was not a police officer, even if it were a black police officer, in a situation like this, like we saw, I think it was in Milwaukee, somewhere. The black officer was convicted and is serving time because he shot a white woman. I don't think that someone of African American descent or maybe of Latino descent would be given what Pantaleo has been given for 5 years and all of the fundraisers and everything. So this is really nothing to celebrate. We're in a place where, good, he's fired, but he needed to be convicted because any other person would have been serving 25 years for murder, right?
And mind you, this is over selling Lucy cigarettes.
Or
the
so-called.
allegation.
That's an allegation.
There were no cigarettes on the ground.
No cigarettes anywhere, from what I'm understanding.
I mean,
It's what they say when they run their narrative, and we pick it up, then we give it strength. And the injustice after the death of Eric Gardner is the fact that the district attorney, if all of this evidence is available now, it was available then.
Right.
The videotape and everything. And he was given a clean sheet by the DA, by the grand jury. And then the DA moves into the Congress. He moves into the Congress, which is where he's at now.
You might explain that.
And he is, you know,
you might explain that the DA on the case ran for Congress after this.
and he's still there.
He's still there.
No, it's a great, what comes out of some of that, the announcement that he was fired, is blaming the victim.
Right.
Blaming Eric Gardner. There's no mention of the commissioner didn't mention that the brother said, that Gardner said 11 times, I can't breathe. That was totally disregarded. And we have to wake up to the fact that these are not just incidents, but they're a series of incidents, not only in New York City, but around the nation. And they're increasing. And our young people have to realize the danger that exists.
Right.
And I don't see that realization based on the continuing being shot in the back, being shot, even kneeling with your hands up, being shot. You know, it's as though they didn't read or look at a TV news broadcast in the last few weeks or months. And I'm saying, what's going on with us on this side? I'm not blaming us. I'm saying that doing that which lends itself, when they shot the boy in the back in Colorado, what came to mind is these guys go hunting. So
And
when
in
he
South
starts running,
Carolina.
no. Colorado, they shot two young boys in the back within 2 or 3 weeks.
Wow.
And the last one is 18 years, it's right on camera. And the boy runs and they blast him away in the back. And my point is that that's a hunt, that's a turkey shoot for them. There's a movie, Betrayed, and it's an important movie. Tom Berenger is the star in that movie, Betrayed. And it has a scene in there. And I don't go into telling people what it is because, you know, our audience has to do research. Your audience has to do research. And it's Betrayed, starring Tom Berenger. And there's a scene in there that's very revealing, very revealing. So, Eric Gardner, if it wasn't for the brother shooting that video,
There you go.
Pantaleo would probably be assistant to the commissioner now.
I think Trump being president has a lot to do with all this. That's all. You can see how everything's. I mean, when you've got a president White House who actually says that Jews who vote Democratic are disloyal to Israel and to the Jewish people. Now, what kind of madness is coming out of the White House? I mean, what is happening? Is this psychosis going completely off? I mean, you sit there and watch the press conference this morning, and I sit there and look at this man. And I've been looking at Donald Trump the last 40 years, you know, watching how he acts and how he responds to stuff. I mean, from the 70s on, you know, he's always been in the limelight in New York. Now I've got 5 years on Trump, so he was a junior player, you know. I mean, well, he had the money, but that was New York. That's the way we played the scene, especially if you had money. And him being such a playboy in New York and coming up and looking at President Obama and being jealous of President Obama.
Very jealous.
All right, and seeing him as president it ripped my heart out. And to sit here and watch this 2.5 years later, I mean, a lot of people were happy with that, you know, saying, well, finally we got racism right in our face. So this will unite the people, unite black people. Now we really got it hard. I mean, now we know but what it's doing to everybody. It's making America look like the buffoons that he is. I mean, then you sit down and think about all this unrighteousness. Now, we're talking about Eric Garner. Now, look at unrighteousness that's seeping into democracy. Now, Graham bang on the table, no democracy. Now, that's the frustration of all of us. And when black people see that there's no hope at all, not a tinkling of a hope, that we got a president that's an out racist in your face, man. You know what that does to us as black people? We turn on each other.
Well,
aren't you seeing that?
Absolutely.
When it's obvious that this guy is a racist,
right.
That's what you just said.
Yeah.
It should bring the group together.
You would think.
Any other group, you know, the more you read, the more you stay on the planet, the more you see things that relate. There's the Stockholm, what they call the Stockholm syndrome, where the prisoner is oppressed so much that the prisoner begins to love the oppressor. They call it the Stockholm syndrome.
Right.
But it existed before Stockholm.
Right.
It existed right here. We've been beat, we've been persecuted, we've been, I mean, women have been, pregnant black women have been lynched and the baby cut out of their stomach. That ain't no made up story.
No, that's the truth.
That's the accounts that we have.
You take all those horrors and you put it in your mindset, and what does it do to you? What does it do to you? No, think about that. You're feeding your mind all that imagery. You're thinking about all the demonic things that's happened to black people over the last 400 years.
The first thing that happens, the way we've been dealt with here in this country, is fear. The fear is reintroduced. And that's where Eric Garner's death it was a public execution.
Yeah.
And the man said, I can't breathe 11 times.
Right.
And this guy showed no mercy. No mercy. He wasn't
He shoved
locked
his head down.
And the other,
but do you know that he had a personal beef with Eric Garner, which was never brought out?
Right.
Which, that's the press.
They knew each other.
Right, they knew each other, and it was clear that they had encounters before, and he was
Did he not have a case against, didn't Garner have a case against Pantaleo?
That he put against Pantaleo for prior, incidents, like altercations, where they were going back and forth and had
But you don't hear anything about that?
No, nothing else has been said about it.
So that was a premeditated murder. That's what I see. Now, in this review of Eric Garner, you can look at the light of day. Now, you can look at the Trump being given Peter Lynch, the commissioner, the ability to be as racist and openly, you know, as white supremacist as they can get. Now, we know this always existed. Now, kids saying, well, you know, a lot of people say, well, it was hidden, but they felt shame about it. And there's no shame in that game.
There's no shame.
There's no shame in that game.
But
At least we had them feeling shameful about it a little bit. They sort of held it back. Oh, I can't be this racist, man. But when you see a nut like that in the White House, whose father was a Klansman, dig it, his grandfather ran a whorehouse in Canada in 1895 and escaped from Germany, or not escaped, but dodged the draft in Germany to go to Canada to make money, and they sold little boys and women in Canada. And he made $1 million up there doing that.
Wow.
Tried to go back to Germany, and they wouldn't let him back in. So he comes to America.
Well, I just want to go back on something that you, revisit something that you said. You were talking about racism and the Trump administration.
Okay.
And the way that I see it is that when you have leadership that has the kind of power that the president has, and he's espousing hate towards groups, he's openly saying things like, you know, he's going to beat them up, or he should punch people in the face, and those people are looking like immigrant people, like African American people, you know, and he's supporting some of the behaviors that we see coming from police that are brutal types of behavior. So when you have that coming from the head, the body is going to follow.
That's
so
right.
Eventually, where people were suppressing and maybe not acting out on thoughts or feelings and actions that they wanted to have towards these folks, they're actually participating in it. And I'll give you an example. Just in the last couple of weeks, right here in New York, and in the same precinct area, there was a call from a family. And no, before the call from the family, there was a call from the street, and people were texting me and sending me video. And they showed a police officer banging, literally banging a young man's head on the ground. And so a few of us, I didn't want to approach this by myself, so I waited. I had a few phone calls, and we decided we would go to the precinct. Some went in, some stayed outside. And the precinct had said they had not made that arrest. And we understood that he had been injured because his ears were bleeding. And so the concern was coming, when I say from the street, people who were outside, people who witnessed it, people who were contacted by the family were calling and saying, we're concerned that maybe his life, he may have expired, meaning died in the hands of police. They weren't sure what happened. So we committed, that was myself, Street Corner Resources, Black Lives Matter, the National Action Network, which was William Allen, Hulk Newsom from Black Lives Matter, and Chanel from the NAACP, Chanel Washington, NAACP, and Shawana Arena Vaughn. I can't think of the name of her organization right now. But we all went over to the next precinct that was present, that was the 25th precinct. Because they said they didn't have them there at the 32nd precinct. So we get over there, and they says, no, the 3-2 made the arrest, and they were real clear and real adamant that they were not involved in this action. It was clear that they wanted to separate themselves from what they knew happened. It was very, very clear, and I don't blame them. But it also seemed like a runaround, like they didn't feel like they had to give us, and this is not the 25th precinct, but like almost like they didn't have to give us real information. So we didn't go home. We left that precinct, and we went to the hospital, where we saw the young man, and he was bleeding at his ears, and he was handcuffed to the bed by hands and feet, shackled down. This arrest, shackled, a young man, maybe 30 at the most, maybe not even 30. He was shackled to the bed by hands and feet. Now, this was a traffic stop. This was a minor traffic stop. He was pulling into a park and did not signal that he was pulling into the park. And it resulted in his head being banged, his ears bleeding. I'm not sure if there were any fractures or anything like that, but all of this began to happen, and other officers also chimed in on this. So that's one incident. The 2 or 3 days later, maybe a week later, a young woman who was having a mental breakdown or an anxiety kind of attack, and she was in a mental health facility, was punched in her eye twice by a police officer, a man. This is a woman. And so we responded to that in a certain way, you know, from the community side. Community leaders responded, and it, you know, was on the news and that kind of thing. So I'm just thinking, like, all of these incidents in a community and in a certain area in a community, and then I began to see that other things were happening in other communities across the country. So it's clear that the leadership, meaning our not ours, but the president of this country, is allowing for a certain kind of mindset and behavior, and people are acting out of that. It's almost carte blanche. Nothing's going to happen if you take a black or Latino person's life, that there's not going to be any real repercussions. And we basically saw that with Pantaleo. We saw that in a whole host of other situations across the country, that there's been no conviction. Indictment is one thing, but a conviction is another.
Well, you might mention Texas and the 22 people that were killed in, what town was it?
El Paso.
El Paso. You know, that was no doubt instigated by Donald Trump. No way of getting around it. But see, that's the whole idea. Here, I think I have a run-in on him talking about police attacking police. Oh, police attacking, you know.
Excuse me, sorry.
This run number, I think it's 5 on Trump. And we'll be right back at you. Either it's that or, which one is it? Yeah, that's the one.
Me, sorry. I think it's the dust.
Today, President Trump took his campaign against gang violence to a community that has been victimized by it, Brentwood, New York, in the suburbs east of New York City. Don Daler is there.
The president came to Long Island to talk to law enforcement officers about a gang known as MS-13 that he says has neighborhoods under siege.
They like to knife them and cut them and let them die slowly, because that way it's more painful, and they enjoy watching that much more. These are animals.
This venue was chosen because near the Suffolk County Community College where he spoke, 17 gang-related murders happened over the past 18 months.
It is the policy of this administration to dismantle, decimate, and eradicate MS-13. We will find you, we will arrest you, we will jail you, and we will deport you.
President Trump even had words of advice to law enforcement on how to handle these arrests.
Please don't be too nice. Like when you guys put somebody in the car and you're protecting their head, I said, you can take the hand away, okay?
Outside the college, about 400 protesters were kept far away from the president. That's where we found Raj and Summer Chetty with their kids. They were skeptical about the president's motives.
Yes, MS-13 is a blight, as gangs are anywhere, but it's a pun, it's a dog whistle.
It's a way to demonize a whole group of people, a whole group of immigrants.
Late this afternoon, the Suffolk County Police Department issued a statement saying, "We do not and will not tolerate roughing up prisoners." Anthony, the president is pushing Congress for more funding for his immigration policies.
Don Daler on Long Island, thanks.
Now, as you see, that's one instance where you see how, now that was a couple of years ago, I think he did that. All right, let's run number 6. I'm going to show you what's happening just in July. Leroy gave this item to me, a young man in Mississippi. Again, traffic stop. All right?
Story. I want to warn you that the picture we're about to show you is quite graphic. And if you're sensitive to that kind of thing, I need y'all to turn away. Attorney Carlos Moore, who we had on the show yesterday, said his client, David Logan, was brutally beaten by cops in Mississippi. Logan was stopped in a routine roadblock during which he was told by the officers to get out of the vehicle he was driving. When he did, Moore says his actions were interpreted as running away and he was attacked. Logan was beaten so badly that he was completely naked on the ground before it ended. We will talk with Attorney Moore and David next week. David's going to have a news conference. He's been on Monday, and he said, of course, they'll come on the show, talk about it. They won't talk about it beforehand, but we wanted to show you that, talk about just an unbelievable story, and we can't wait to hear what he has to say about really what took place.
And there's just, you brought that to my attention. Now, it's just happening all over the place.
Well, there's a similarity in the police chief in that particular town saying that he wasn't beat.
Right.
And that he wasn't beat, even though we're looking at the man in that state. You come fast forward to New York City, and the guy's saying, hey, if Eric Gardner would have obeyed, then what happened to him wouldn't have happened to him. It's the same strain. It's the same identical thing. What is in front of you, they tell you is not in front of you. Fact is, they said it wasn't a chokehold. I'm not talking about this hearing that came about, but it wasn't a chokehold. There are more people, there are more citizens in New York City than police. How come the police have more political power than exercising more political power than the people? Except the people we need to be organized. I mean, and these guys live in the suburbs, they live way upstate, they live in New Jersey. You understand? When they were telling Dinkins that he was a washer, what did they say? He was a washroom attendant. And that was a police riot, according to the writers who talked about it. And Giuliani was leading the pack.
Yeah.
So, you know, hey, we're in a serious situation. We as a people are in a serious situation.
So what do we do about it?
I think that one of the things that we have to do is come together in our own communities, and the other thing is not feel hopeless. I think that because of the climate in America, that all across the country with, I don't like to call it black-on-black violence, but with the violence that we see in our own communities, well, it's, you know, Latinos are shooting each other too, and so are other people. But that kind of gun violence that we're seeing and the trauma that goes with it leads to a sense of hopelessness. And then the increased amount of police beatings and shootings, there's a certain sense of hopelessness. And I think, so one, we have to not become hopeless, but become more hopeful by taking action. Action makes you more hopeful. It pushes you into a place where you're doing something about something that bothers you. And if it bothers you, you should take action. Inaction makes you feel worse because you're watching that thing happen over and over and over again. And all people are doing in some cases are just having conversations, but no action. And so, one, we need to come together. Excellent. Two, we need to not criminalize each other for taking action. Because there are those who sit on the stoop and watch you take action, but are not willing to get off the stoop or from in front of the television or outside of the church or mosque or synagogue or Kingdom Hall and take action with you. But they will ridicule the person taking the action. So we have to stop criminalizing our leaders, stop making people wrong for trying to do right.
Or calling them sellouts.
Or calling them sellouts. So I think...
what does that mean anyway?
Yeah, and selling out to whom?
You're selling out your people because you're trying to do the right thing.
Yeah. So we have to be careful about that.
Wait a minute. And you sitting on complaining, going through all this drama, talking about what happened 400 years ago, and yet you're not participating.
No, not
you're
participating
adding to, but feeding our people that disease of hate. That
you know,
poison.
The respect for our leadership, right?
Okay.
So we don't have to agree, what my grandmother used to call lock, stock, and barrel, with every leader.
Okay.
I think what we have to do is look for the good and support that good that we see, right? And not try to pull that person down because we don't agree with everything. Because
All right, tell me this. I heard just yesterday, you know, I worked with Reverend Sharp for the last 22 years, and this sucker, this sucker comes up and said, Sharpton's a sellout. I say, well, you have to see, you see this Eric Gardner case, and you call Reverend Sharpton a sellout? What is wrong with you? I mean, he was sick, obviously, but I mean, that's all over the place. I know different programs on this same station here where they're calling people like Reverend Sharpton a sellout. Why?
Well, we have a slave mentality.
Ah, there you go.
And
Okay.
a slave mentality.
Crabs in the barrel?
I'm sorry.
Crabs in the barrel?
We can call it that. And I have a chart here by Francis Cress Welsing, and it's counter white supremacy, and it has a whole list of don't do. Stop cursing one another. Stop snitching on one another, informing on one another for personal gain. Stop squabbling with one another. Stop gossiping about one another, because that's a dead-end street. Stop fighting one another, killing one another. Stop throwing down trash in your own community. See, you tell somebody, you know, hey, why don't you tell your child to pick that potato chip bag up? They might turn on you.
Right.
You know? So there's a syndrome, and what Sister Aisha is saying is totally correct. We have to organize, and that's what Brother Stokely Carmichael, that's not his name, Kwame Ture?
Kwame Ture.
Yeah. He left out of here saying organize, organize, organize.
That's right.
He left out, that was his mantra. And start in our own families. Our own families are hurting because we're not organized. And if we're not organized within our own family, we can't be that effective in organizing in the tenant association. Let's get our households together.
Yeah,
it's not
right.
difficult. We just have to do. And when we don't do those things, it feeds into white supremacy.
That's it. Okay.
We feed it. We, you know, when
we
we
help
don't
that
read,
to grow. We help
exactly.
the reality come forth of what they are predicting or projecting that we are. And so if we are not who they are trying to create us to be, whether it's the creation of the thought that we're lazy or that we don't want anything or we don't care about each other, we can't have behaviors within our own community that support what they're saying on that side. We have to stand fast and be willing to take the lead in our neighborhood, in our building, on our block, in the school, wherever we are. We have to bring leadership to it. We don't have to be perfect in leadership.
Right.
And I think that that's one of the places where we have to be better about. We have to give ourselves permission to have a place to start, even if we don't know everything to do. Because when you start, the help will appear. The help will come and help you.
That's right.
And so, you know, you might be the mother who had only a 7th grade education and didn't get a chance to get to college or finish high school. But it's okay, because you may have some other skills that comes out of the household that you can use in the community.
Well,
I mean, it takes a lot to manage a home.
If you're a mother alone, you've got that love energy it takes to create another human being.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're the gods of the planet. You know me.
No, absolutely. And we have to support the men in our community, you know? No matter where they've been or what their station has been in life, to also lead. And I'm talking in particularly about men who have been incarcerated. Right. There's a major breaking of the spirit in places like solitary confinement, where a lot of them come home and they're not feeling like they can be a viable part of the community. And so you get fewer and not more. And we need to make it okay that they come into this community and they help to lead. They come back into their communities and provide that missing piece, that man leadership that's missing in our community. So a lot of these things happen because, one, they know that we have not really fought back. And I'm not talking always a physical fight. There is a legislative fight. There are ways to fight on the city and on the city, state, and platform, and that we have to learn that we belong in Albany. We belong in Washington, D.C. We can go to the Supreme Court. I mean, we can go to a lot of places, but we don't see ourselves in those places. And so I really want to thank Reverend Sharpton in a certain way for exposing a lot of us to that.
Oh, yeah.
That you can go in a place, or you can be at a place and protest. You can have voice in Washington, D.C. You can have voice in Albany, and to use our voices. So, again, I just really would love to urge people to, you know, follow the leadership that you think brings you what you need, and that provides a good, safe, and comfortable space for you to develop as a leader, or to lead. And you know, because we have so many great people in leadership. Minister Farrakhan, I mean, I've learned so much from reading his books, hearing his lectures, you know, watching the YouTubes, and so many other leaders. I mean, so we have to respect what our leaders bring and what we can use, and not use what we don't understand or respect in a way to tear them down, so that we create some unity based on something real. You know?
Well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to run the source of my energy. And I think Reverend Sharpton's too, because I always say Reverend Sharpton is a disciple of Martin Luther King. All right? So here of all the struggles, somebody made a comment at the huddle Monday night about Martin, or comparing him to one of the rappers, and I like flipped out, because Martin to me is a, you know, our true spiritual basis, foundation. So run item 1, and here's Martin talking about immigration, which is key to, you've seen this before, but I think it's apropos for what we're going through right now, and how he handled it, how he speaks on it. Number 1, all right?
What is it about the Negro? I mean, every other group that came as an immigrant somehow, not easily, but somehow got around it. Is it just the fact that Negroes are black?
White America must see that no other ethnic group has been a slave on American soil. That is one thing that other immigrant groups haven't had to face. The other thing is that the color became a stigma. American society made the Negro's color a stigma. America freed the slaves in 1863 through the Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln, but gave the slaves no land or nothing in reality, and as a matter of fact, to get started on. At the same time, America was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that there was a willingness to give the white peasants from Europe an economic base. And yet it refused to give its black peasants from Africa, who came here involuntarily in chains and had worked free for 244 years, any kind of economic base. And so emancipation for the Negro was really freedom to hunger. It was freedom to the winds and rains of heaven. It was freedom without food to eat or land to cultivate, and therefore it was freedom and famine at the same time. And when white Americans tell the Negro to lift himself by his own bootstraps, they don't look over the legacy of slavery and segregation. I believe we ought to do all we can and seek to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps, but it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And many Negroes, by the thousands and millions, have been left bootless as a result of all of these years of oppression, and as a result of a society that deliberately made his color a stigma and something worthless and degrading.
Now, I take that to heart, because I mean, I was raised on King. We were raised on King. That was our, and Malcolm called them a Tom. I mean, in the early 60s, this is 67 we see here, all right, after Malcolm had died. But these were our shining heroes. I mean, Malcolm was Muslim, Martin was Christian, but I come out of the Baptist church, and you were raised a Catholic. Now, I bring this up because Leroy and I are the same age, and we come through the same scene in Harlem, and so we're exposed to the same energies. And we say, I see, as far as black men were concerned, this mold that we were raised in doesn't exist anymore. I mean, we're both 78 years old. So now we look at a man like Martin, and we see that he had a key to the sense of the injustice that's always been here. I mean, black people have always been, then you go to the people in their 30s today, and they had to live underneath the planned genocide of the 80s, when Ronald Reagan came into existence, when they put crack into our situation.
Exactly.
Crack was the worst thing that ever, that what they ever put into the black community was crack. And you take these rappers and all these other people who are dealing and who benefited from selling or killing their people. For them to stand tall and have all the money today shows you how the planned genocide worked.
That's right.
All right? How the white man put this disease in our community, which destroyed our family. I fell wayside in the early 80s to drugs, and I had a good job. I had a good family. I lost my family and I lost everything because of drugs. Influenced by younger people giving me different things. All right? Well, that was my problem. But my problem was anybody successful. For many of us fell to the wayside because of coke and fast lane and just having a good time. All right?
Or what you thought was a good time.
Of course. We all paid for that good time through depression, and look what happened to us as a people. Now we're putting out music where we're degrading our women, talking about, kill this one, kill that one. All this is a disease plaguing our community. Yet these are younger people's heroes. These people who made their money from what? Killing our people?
Well,
of crack?
Starting with this last point first, the enemy has come in on the rhythm and on the momentum of hip-hop, rap, and paid and is paying people in the industry money to have negative lyrics.
Perpetuated.
And they're promoting that.
Right.
But they had done this as a result of those individuals in the business, in the hip-hop and the rap business, becoming independently wealthy. So they paid off another group to come with negative stuff. The rap, the original rap music is totally positive. I mean, real fun, positive. Yeah, but I just want, I'm not an authority on that. There are brothers and sisters who are authorities on that, can lay it out perfectly. But I'm going back to Martin Luther King. I was one of those in that group who was calling him a Tom.
Yeah, I know. That's why I mentioned him.
So this is what we did in the Catholic Church confession. I'm gonna let people know I ain't gonna play behind. Yeah, you're right, Gil. So, but when I began to listen to Martin Luther King, when I began to listen, I'm picking up so much history. History. And on that point, when black men are questioned by reporters like Sharpton was at that meeting, these are not questions that are put to elicit information. They're questions that are put so that the response can be used in a negative manner in the papers or the electronic media. But there's his first response, and this is real quick. Martin Luther King, in that little clip, he recalls history. So he's teaching. Sharpton does the same thing. They ask him a question, he goes and brings up history.
Right.
Ask Farrakhan a question, he brings up history.
Okay.
And they're actually teaching the audience beyond the interviewer. It's a very interesting thing. So to be effective, you got to know, got to know some history, whatever venue you're in. The appreciation of Martin Luther King is something where we have to study. We have to study his speeches. His speeches are on the money, but we never. You heard a preacher back in the '60s. I heard a preacher. Today I hear the same presentation. I'm hearing an educator, a person of tremendous knowledge, and that's to be nourished on. You know, and we have to do that in our little family gatherings or just personal. So I just wanted to make that point.
Well, you know, Saturday at National Action Network is church. I mean,
every Saturday.
It's church. I mean, he has a religious. I'm going to start playing some of this stuff. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, he had about Moses. Moses was a fugitive. You know, he was running from the law. Rev put it, he's running from the cops. I mean, Rev is so on. I mean, it's such an uplift. So when I hear us talking about our leaders, you know, I'll play a piece by Malcolm, which this is January 5th, 1965. Play that last one before we go off, and I'll give you, this is our leaders. Now, this is a month before he died, all right? And he was out of the movement, but yet he still sound amenable to making peace with everybody. But play this.
Malcolm X. Sir, what's the real reason why you two men split? Is it merely ideological, or is it personality? What else?
Probably personality. It was not the statement that originally was given by the movement when we split. It's more personality than anything else.
You've called people like Martin Luther King, who just got a Nobel Peace Prize, an Uncle Tom. Is this correct, first?
Well, I'd rather say that in the States, there's a law that has recently been passed, or a decision handed down by the court, wherein if you call someone an Uncle Tom, they can sue you for libel.
Well,
so I never refer to them as Uncle Toms. I would say that Uncle Martin is my friend.
Uncle Martin is your friend, yet you would disagree with his approach to what he wants to accomplish.
Definitely. If his approach would bring about what the black man in America needs to completely eliminate the problem that we have, I would say well and good. But I very much doubt that anyone who adopts the approach that Martin Luther King has been teaching to our people in that country can point to any meaningful gains that has actually served to solve the problem.
Black Muslims have sometimes, whether you have or not, and I think probably you have sometimes, it seemed to me, been preaching hate to meet hate.
I don't advocate any kind of hate.
But there's a lot of talk that sounds very much like it.
No, I think that the guilt complex of the American white man is so profound until when you begin to analyze the real condition of the black man in America, instead of the American white man eliminating the causes that create that condition, he tries to cover it up by accusing his accusers of teaching hate. But actually, they're just exposing him for being responsible for what exists.
Well, that's something of an argument, but I've heard speeches made by some of the people of your group. I think I've heard you make speeches. It seemed to me that you were advocating what I would have to describe, I think, as violence to meet the serious injuries that have been done your people, with which I totally agree.
I don't call that violence. I don't in any way encourage black people to go out and initiate acts of aggression indiscriminately against whites. But I do believe that the black man in the United States, and any human being, anywhere, is well within his right to do whatever is necessary, by any means necessary, to protect his life and property, especially in a country where the federal government itself has proven that it is either unable or unwilling to protect the lives and property of those human beings.
Just before Pierre takes it, you've got a pretty good fighter and the world's heavyweight champion lined up with you to help out. Yes, Pierre.
Well, Mr. X, I guess I call you that. Is that the proper appellation,
Yes.
Mr. X? I'm wondering if you still believe, as I think you certainly did at the time you were allied to the black Muslim movement, in a segregated black nation in North America.
I don't believe in any form of segregation or any form of racism. I'm against any form of segregation and against racism.
Am I right in saying that the black Muslim movement, which you have left, did believe in that?
Well, Elijah Muhammad taught his followers that the only solution was a separate state for black people. And as long as I thought he genuinely believed that himself, I believed in him and believed in his solution. But when I began to doubt that he himself believed that that was feasible, and I saw no kind of action designed to bring it into existence or bring it about, then I turned in a different direction.
Are you still a Muslim yourself?
Oh, yes. I'm a Muslim. I believe in the religion of Islam, which believes in brotherhood, complete brotherhood of all people. But at the same time that I believe in this brotherhood, I don't believe in forcing my desire for brotherhood upon those who aren't willing to accept it.
Of course, I think the Christians would say that they also believed in brotherhood. What did you say to that?
I'd say they believe in it, but don't practice it.
That'd be a pretty good answer.
Now you have my Christian here and a Muslim across from you, and Aisha is a Muslim. All right, we have 2 Muslim and 1 Christian. So now we're teaching, and one people, and we're preaching unity and togetherness, and power to the people.
That's right.
You know, I'm still a Baptist now. My mama raised me as a Baptist now. I'm still going to Baptist church now. But, you know, y'all come back now here. But, you know, this is what I'm talking about. Now, I just showed 2 of the biggest men in our history that learn from their own errors and how we have to correct and bob and weave through all this nonsense and keep the hate out of your head, because that hate poisons you. That's the disease. Now we can see it right in Donald Trump. You see, he got in this. He got in this game by accident. He would have made more money, and if he hadn't have been elected as president. We know he's Putin's puppet, not bee. I won't call him a bee anymore because it's silly. That's nonsense. Donald Trump is Putin's puppet. That's it. He's pulling the strings, and this is all readily available. I mean, we can see this conniving, but God help the people that believe in him and actually go for this con. And that's who I really feel sorry for. Now God's going to come down, you know, she's going to come say something about this. You know what's going to happen.
If we believe in a God, black people, if we believe, I'm including those in the audience that if we believe in a God, a supreme being, that supreme being would not leave black people hopeless here in the wilderness of North America.
Power to the people. That's Manhattan. We got the Bronx.
And no, would not leave us hopeless.
Okay.
And without backing up.
Right.
So black people have to look for those signs.
Right.
Those signs.
Of God.
And we're great people. We're fantastic people. And our children are our wealth. That's why an effort is being made to not educate our children.
That's right.
We have to educate our children. And their bright minds, they are not to be wasted.
Thank you.
We got to take that hand.
That's the solution.
Yes, it is. And I think one of the things in our community as Muslims, Christians, Jews, Israelites, whatever people believe in, that we also have to believe in each other enough, to invest in our community and make things better and stronger.
And the God in me loves the God in you. That's even more powerful right now. Power to the people.
Power
God
to the
bless.
people. That's right.
Excellent.
Right?
Thank you.
Great show.
That was fun.
Thank you for having me.
Wasn't that fun?
Oh, absolutely. It's always great
Sister
to be among